for the barbell back squat, the first thing we want to do is get our equipment set up at the right height. I recommend starting with the bar about armpit height, and you can set up the J-hooks to approximate that. From there, you can either go higher or lower depending on your preference. I like about armpit height because it allows me to get underneath that bar when setting up. Setting up is critical. Most people, when they get underneath the bar, they just kind of wander underneath here and just any old way, and I'm sure it can work for them just fine, but I like to be consistent, and I like to know that that bar is rigid and it's in place and it isn't going anywhere. So I'm going to show you one of the best ways to get set up that you can use each and every time you do this. Now notice I'm also using a squat rack that's bolted into the wall. If you're using a freestanding rig or a wall mount rig, you'll be fine, or you're using a power rack, you should be good when doing this technique. If you're using independent squat racks, the ones that each rack is on its own separately, it's just a stand, I do not recommend doing this on it as it won't be able to hold you up. Now, once I got armpit height, I'm going to roll that bar towards the front of the J-hook so there's no more roll in it. And then I'm going to find the distance for my hands. Most people, they want their hands obviously to be able to clear their shoulders. Some people prefer to have a wider out stance, whether that's just from personal preference, they feel more secure there, or it just may be more comfortable if they're losing some mobility in their shoulders, their upper back. It just might feel better for them to be able to go out a little bit wider. Me personally, I like to come in nice and close, about a thumb width distance from my shoulders. In order to find that, my shoulders are right about where the smooth part meets the knurling, and so I'm going to take about a thumb width distance from there. You can find out what works for you. You may end up going a little wider, a little closer, but make sure once you adjust that, you stay consistent with it. Once I establish that, I'm going to wrap my thumb and fingers around nice and tight. Make sure my wrists are straight. They're not bent down or back. Next, I'm going to place my feet shoulder width directly underneath that bar. They're not going to be out in front or behind. From here, I'm going to pull my shoulder blades back and together. When I pull my shoulder blades back like this, it's going to raise my traps, this meaty part of my upper back. It's going to raise that up, forming this meaty muscular ridge where this bar is going to sit. You want to avoid having it sit right on one of your vertebrae, or if you want to like having it sit right on your scapula or your shoulder blades. That's going to hurt, and it's probably not the safest position either. So you want to get it on some meaty part of your back. All right, feet underneath, shoulder blades back, forming that ridge. I'm going to sink back with my hips, with my arms extended, still keep my shoulder blades together, and then I'm going to pull myself up underneath so it gets right underneath that ridge. Notice once I have it secure, I'm pulling that barbell down onto my back. Now I'm going to use my legs and hips to unrack it. From here, I'm going to take 2 steps back. 1, 2. When we unrack it, we want to avoid using any extra energy, kind of doing these little scoots back. Try to show you from an angled position what this will look like. Now, once I've unracked it and I'm back at a good distance from the rack, now I need to find my squat stance. Some people prefer to have their toes straight ahead. Some people prefer to have them more outwards. Just make sure as you're performing this movement, the heels stay down throughout. Once I've established my foot position, I'm going to take in my belly breath to create that rigidity throughout my torso, and I'm going to initiate movement by bending at the knees and hips as I spread the floor apart, driving my knees out. My butt's going to go back, but it's also going to go down. We want to avoid having the butt go back too far and making that our main point, otherwise the shoulders are going to cave forward. Belly breath, bend at the knees and hips, drive the knees out, sink down into that squat position, come back up. Once you've completed all designated number of reps, take those 2 steps forward, hit the J-hooks, set it back down. Again, as you're squatting, we want to make sure that we're sitting down as opposed to sitting back, allowing the shoulders to come forward. Want to stay as upright as possible, and that's going to depend on where that barbell is in relation to your upper back. If you have it really high up here, there's a chance you'll be able to stay pretty well upright. If it's further down on your upper back, there's a chance in order to keep this bar in a good spot, you're going to have to push the hips back a little more. Either way, when you break it down with a back squat, as you squat down, that bar is moving in a straight line, usually in line with your ankle or just in front of your ankle. It's moving straight up and down. We want to avoid that bar, if you're looking at it from the side, moving at kind of an arch or an angle. It's just not efficient for moving that weight. Take the time to adjust and find a good position on your back. Don't just kind of wander into it, unrack it, and just do it. Be consistent with it, find what works for you, and take the time to set up your feet properly as well to make sure that it fits your body. Now, as far as distance and depth, at least go down far enough until your upper legs are parallel with the ground. If you feel comfortable going all the way down and your hips stay in a good position, your back stays in a good position, more power to you. If you have knee issues, maybe it hurts to go down that far, you can either use a box squat, which we also offer in our exercise library, or you can simply just shorten that range of motion and intentionally come down a little bit shorter from that parallel stance. That's how you do a barbell back squat.